Welcome to my channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. Listen, before we begin this story, I need you to understand something. What happened in Death Valley last October had nothing to do with the heat, nothing to do with water, nothing to do with any of the warnings you've heard before. The park rangers won't tell you about the real rules. They can't. But I can, because I broke them. And somehow, I'm still here to tell you about it. If you're listening to this late at night, maybe you should turn on a light. Just a suggestion. Now, let the story begin. My name is Marcus Chen, and 3 weeks ago I was just another software developer from San Jose, burning through vacation days I'd been hoarding for 2 years. Death Valley wasn't even on my radar until Jake called. "Dude, you gotta come with us." Jake's voice crackled through my AirPods while I was debugging code at 2 a.m. Death Valley. This weekend, Tommy found something. Tommy was Jake's cousin from Bakersfield, one of those guys who spent more time in the desert than in civilization. He worked for the Geological Survey, or at least that's what he told people at barbecues. Death Valley in October? I minimized my IDE. Isn't it still like 100 degrees? That's the thing. Jake paused, and I could hear him typing. Tommy says October is when things get interesting after the summer tourists leave. Something in his tone made me stop scrolling through error logs. Interesting how? He won't say over the phone, just keeps talking about some rules. Says most people don't know about them because, another pause, because most people who learn about them don't come back to share. I should have hung up, should have laughed it off and gone back to my code, but I'd been staring at screens for 18 months straight. And something about Jake's nervous energy infected me. When do we leave? 3 days later. I was packed into Jake's Ram 1500 with him and 2 other guys from our college days. Eddie and Malik. Tommy would meet us at Furnace Creek. The drive from San Jose should have taken 6 hours. It took us 9. Because Eddie kept insisting we stop at every in and out along I-5. The sun was setting when we finally turned onto Highway 190, painting the Panamint Mountains the color of dried blood. That's when Jake turned down the music. Okay, Tommy texted me the rules. Eddie laughed from the back seat. Rules? What is this, Fight Club? But Jake wasn't smiling. He pulled up his phone, squinting at the screen in the dying light. Rule number 1, never camp alone. Always maintain visual contact with at least one other person, especially after midnight. Creepy, Malik muttered. Rule number 2, if you hear your name called from the desert, don't answer. Don't look, just wake the others immediately. The truck got quieter. Rule number 3, the ravens aren't really ravens. Don't feed them, don't photograph them, don't make eye contact. What do you mean they're not ravens? I asked. Jake shrugged. That's all it says. There's more but. Tommy says he'll explain when we get there. We reached Furnace Creek as full darkness fell. The visitor center was closed, but Tommy's Tacoma was parked outside, waiting. He looked different from the last time I'd seen him. Thinner. His eyes kept scanning the horizon even while he hugged Jake. You brought them. He seemed relieved. Good. Safety in numbers. Tommy, what's this about? Jake asked. Your texts were intense. Tommy glanced around the empty parking lot, then leaned in close. 2 months ago, I was doing survey work near Badwater Basin. Found something. Stone markers. Old ones. Maybe indigenous. Maybe older. They had symbols, warnings. He pulled out his phone, showed us photos of weathered rocks covered in strange markings. I translated what I could. These aren't the usual Death Valley dangers. These are rules for surviving something else. Something else? Eddie's skepticism was obvious. October through November, every year, Death Valley becomes, Tommy struggled for words, permeable. Things that shouldn't be here are. The indigenous peoples knew. The 49ers who got lost here in 1849. Some of them learned too, the few who made it out. This is insane, Malik said. Is it? Tommy's eyes were deadly serious. You know how many people go missing in Death Valley each year? Really missing, not found dead from dehydration, just gone? None of us had an answer. I've mapped out a camp spot, Telescope Peak Wilderness, far from the tourist areas. If we follow the rules, we'll be fine. We might even see them. See what? I asked. Tommy's smile was thin. The ones who didn't follow the rules. We made camp 12 miles from the nearest paved road. Tommy had chosen a spot in a natural bowl of rocks, protected on 3 sides. The October night was surprisingly cold, maybe 45 degrees. We built a fire and settled in with our sleeping bags arranged in a tight circle. Tommy pulled out a notebook, weathered and filled with cramped handwriting. Okay, the full rules. He read by firelight. 1 through 3, I already told you. 4, if you find objects that shouldn't be in the desert, modern things, personal items, don't touch them. They're bait. Bait for what? Eddie asked. But Tommy kept reading. 5, between 3 and 4 a.m. No matter what you see, stay in your sleeping bag. That's when they count. Count? Jake's voice cracked slightly. 6, if someone in the group starts acting wrong, speaking in rhythms, moving too smoothly, that's not them anymore. The real them is lost. Don't follow the copy. Tommy, this is 7. Tommy continued, ignoring Eddie. The most important rule. If the stars go out, if the sky turns solid black, close your eyes and count to 300. When you open them, you might be alone. That's okay. The others are probably safe, probably in their own timeline. Wait until sunrise. Everyone returns at sunrise, usually. The fire crackled, somewhere in the distance. A coyote howled, or something that sounded like a coyote. I'm going to sleep, Eddie announced. This ghost story stuff is fun, but I'm exhausted. We all settled in, but I couldn't sleep. The stars above were impossibly bright, more than I'd ever seen near San Jose. I lay there listening to the others' breathing slowly deepen. Tommy had insisted we keep the fire going all night, taking shifts to feed it. I had first watch. Around 1 a.m., I heard it. My name. Soft. Like wind through rocks. But unmistakably my name. Marcus? My whole body went rigid. The voice came from beyond the firelight, from the open side of our rock bowl. Marcus, come here. It sounded like my mother, but my mother was in Sacramento, sleeping in her apartment, not wandering Death Valley at 1 a.m. I remembered Rule 2. Don't answer. Don't look. Wake the others. I reached over and shook Jake hard. What? He mumbled. Someone's calling my name, I whispered. Jake shot upright. Tommy was already awake, watching me with those intense eyes. You didn't answer, did you? Tommy asked. I shook my head. Good, good. He threw more wood on the fire, making it blaze higher. It'll stop soon. They can't hold the voice for long. They? I asked. But Tommy just pointed to my ears. That's when I realized. The voice was still calling. But now it was cycling through different people I knew. My ex-girlfriend, my brother, my college roommate. Each voice perfect. Each one telling me to come out into the dark. After 10 minutes, it stopped. First test passed, Tommy said quietly. Try to sleep, I'll take watch. But I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to the desert, and I swear, just at the edge of perception, I could hear footsteps circling our camp, staying just outside the firelight, waiting. At 2:47 a.m., Tommy woke us all. "Almost 3, he whispered. "Remember, no matter what you see, stay in your sleeping bags." We all lay still, Eddie grumbling but complying. At exactly 3 a.m., the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. And then they came. Figures, walking past our camp. Dozens of them. They looked human, but wrong. Their movements too fluid, like they were underwater. Some wore modern clothes, hiking gear. Others wore older clothing, vintage styles from decades past. One woman in a 1950s dress walked by. Her face turned toward us, but her eyes were just dark holes. They were counting. I could hear them whispering numbers in unison, but not in English, not in any language I recognized. One stopped directly in front of me. It wore a North Face jacket, identical to mine. It had my face, but stretched, like someone had pulled the skin too tight. It looked down at me and smiled with too many teeth. 17, it said in my voice, then moved on. They counted us, all of us, even themselves. When they finished, they walked back into the darkness, single file, disappearing beyond the firelight. But that wasn't all. As the procession ended, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. One of the figures at the back of the line turned around. It was wearing Tommy's exact clothes. Same hiking boots, same worn flannel shirt, same weathered baseball cap. But when it looked at us, its face was blank, featureless, like someone had forgotten to finish sculpting it. It tilted its head at our Tommy, the real Tommy, as if studying him, memorizing. Then it raised one hand in what might have been a wave or a threat, and walked away. "Did you see that?" I whispered to Tommy. "See what?" He was staring after the figures with a strange expression. The one that looked like... I didn't see anything unusual. Tommy cut me off, but his voice was different, flatter. "They're gone now. That's what matters." At 4 a.m. exactly, the temperature returned to normal. "What the hell was that?" Malik's voice was shaking. "The census," Tommy replied. "They count who's here, who's real, who's not. As long as the numbers match, we're safe." "Match what?" Jake asked. "The number from the night before. If someone extra shows up, or if someone's missing," Tommy trailed off. "That's when things get complicated." But something was wrong with the way he spoke. Too measured, like he was reading lines. Eddie sat up. "I'm done. I want to leave, now." "Can't." Tommy shook his head. "Not until sunrise, Rule 8. Which I didn't mention, never travel the valley at night during October. The roads don't lead where they should." "This is insane." Eddie stood up. "Sit down," Tommy hissed. But it was too late. The stars went out. One moment, the Milky Way blazed above us. The next, absolute blackness, like someone had thrown a blanket over the entire sky. "Close your eyes," Tommy shouted. "Count to 300, now!" I squeezed my eyes shut and started counting. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, I could hear the others counting too. But their voices seemed to be getting farther away. By 50, Mississippi. I could only hear my own voice. By 100. The ground beneath me felt different. Softer, by 200. The temperature had changed, warmer. By 250. I smelled something wrong, like copper and ozone. At 300. I opened my eyes. I was alone. The fire was gone. The rocks were the same, but different. Older somehow. Worn smooth in places that had been jagged before. My sleeping bag lay on sand now, not the gravelly surface from before. "Jake?" My voice echoed wrong, like the space was bigger than it should be. Tommy? Malik? Silence. I stood up. My phone had no signal, but the screen showed 4:17 a.m. The stars were back, but different. Constellations I didn't recognize, and 2 moons hung in the sky where one should be. No, not 2 moons. I looked closer. One was the moon. The other was something else, spherical, but covered in what looked like geometric patterns. Artificial. I remembered Tommy's words. Wait until sunrise. Everyone returns at sunrise, usually. Usually. I sat back down on my sleeping bag, trying not to panic. The desert around me looked the same but felt fundamentally wrong. Like looking at a picture of your house where someone had moved all the furniture 3 inches to the left. Then I heard footsteps. Not the fluid movement of those things from 3 a.m., regular. Human footsteps. Stumbling, exhausted. A figure emerged from the darkness. A man in vintage clothing. Canvas pants, suspenders, a hat that belonged in a museum. His face was sunburned and desperate. "Water," he croaked. "Please, water." I reached for my bottle, then stopped. This felt like a test. Another rule Tommy hadn't mentioned. The man fell to his knees. "Please, we've been walking for days. The valley. It won't let us leave." "We?" I asked. He gestured behind him, and more figures stumbled into view. Men and women in 1800s clothing. The 49ers. The original Death Valley victims. Still here, still lost. "How long have you been walking?" I asked. The man looked at me with hollow eyes. "What year is it?" 2024. He laughed, broken and horrible. Then, 175 years, give or take. I backed away. These weren't ghosts. They were still alive, somehow. Death Valley had kept them, preserved them in this other space. "The rules," the man gasped. "We didn't know the rules. Came in October. The valley took us, keeps us. Walking, always walking, never aging, never dying, never leaving. There has to be a way out." "Sunrise," a woman in the group said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Real sunrise, not the false ones. You can tell the difference. Real sunrise hurts them." "Hurts who?" She pointed behind me. I turned. The things from 3 a.m. were back. Dozens of them, standing at the edge of my vision, watching. But now I could see them clearly. They weren't copies of people. They were failed attempts. Like someone had tried to recreate humans from memory and gotten the details wrong. Too many joints in their arms, faces that shifted when you weren't looking directly at them. They wore the clothes of everyone who'd gotten lost here. Different eras, different styles, all wrong. But what terrified me most was that I recognized some of the clothes. A red jacket that looked exactly like one I'd seen in a missing persons poster at the visitor center. Hiking boots identical to ones worn by a family who'd disappeared 2 summers ago. A backpack that belonged to a college student who'd vanished while rock climbing. They were wearing the skins of the lost. "They collect us," the 49er said. "Study us, try to become us, but they can't get it right, can't understand what makes us, us." One of the things stepped forward. It wore modern hiking gear, REI, Patagonia, but its movement was all wrong. Like a marionette operated by someone who'd never seen a human walk. "Marcus," it said in Tommy's voice, "come with us. The others are waiting." "That's not Tommy," I said. It tilted its head 90 degrees. "How do you know?" Because Tommy would never smile like that. Wide and empty and showing far too many teeth. But then another voice spoke from behind the group of things. Tommy's voice, but different from the first. "Marcus, don't listen to it. I'm the real Tommy. I got separated like you did. I've been looking for you." I turned. Another figure approached. This one looked exactly like Tommy. Same clothes, same mannerisms, even the same way of favoring his left ankle from an old hiking injury. "Which one is real?" I asked the 49ers. "Neither." The woman whispered, "Your friend was taken hours ago. These are just echoes, trying to perfect his form." The two Tommies looked at each other. Then they began to change. Subtly, their faces shifting, becoming more like each other, more perfect. But in that perfection, they lost something essentially human. "The real sunrise?" I asked the 49ers without taking my eyes off the things. "How do you recognize it?" "You'll know," the woman said. "It burns them. They hide. That's your window. Minutes, maybe, before they adapt." The things wearing Tommy's voices stepped closer. More of them emerged, hundreds, all looking at me with those wrong faces. "We just want to understand," they said in unison. "We just want to be real." That's when I understood. Death Valley in October wasn't permeable to let things in. It was permeable to keep things from getting out. These things, whatever they were prisoners here. And every October, they tried to escape by replacing the humans who wandered in. The sky was starting to lighten. False dawn or real, I couldn't tell. The things pressed closer, their faces cycling through every person I'd ever known. Mom, Dad, ex-girlfriends, co-workers, all wrong, all empty. Then pain, actual pain. The sunrise hit the horizon and the things screamed, not with their mouths, but with their whole beings. They writhed and twisted and fled back into the shadows between rocks. "Now!" The 49er grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Run! Back to your timeline. Think of your friends. Picture them clearly." I ran. The sunrise burned brighter than any sunrise should. The landscape blurred, shifted. I could feel reality bending, stretching. I thought of Jake's stupid laugh, Eddie's complaining, Malik's terrible jokes, Tommy's intense eyes. The ground shifted under my feet. The air shimmered. And suddenly, I was back at our campsite. Jake was shaking me. "Marcus, thank God. Where were you?" I looked around. Everyone was there. Eddie, Malik, Tommy, all staring at me with relief and something else. Fear. "How long was I gone?" I asked. 3 hours, Tommy said. "It's 7 a.m. We all came back at sunrise except you. We thought..." He trailed off. "You thought the things got me?" Tommy nodded. I stood up, started packing my gear. "We're leaving," I said. "Now. And we're never coming back in October." "Agreed." Eddie was already stuffing his sleeping bag. As we hiked back to the trucks, I kept checking behind us. The morning sun made everything look normal, safe. But I knew better now. Death Valley was a prison. And every October, the inmates tried to escape. We reached the trucks by noon. As we loaded our gear, Tommy pulled me aside. "What did you see?" he asked. "In the other timeline?" I told him about the 49ers. The things, the false attempts at being human. Tommy's face went pale. "They're getting better at it, every year. More convincing. One day, they'll get it right, and when they do..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. We drove out of Death Valley in silence, but just as we reached the park boundary, I saw something in the rearview mirror that made my blood freeze. One of the things, standing by the road sign, wearing my clothes, my face, waving goodbye. Or maybe, "Hello." You'd think that would be the end of it. Drive away, never look back. Pretend it was all some desert hallucination brought on by dehydration and Tommy's ghost stories. That's what Eddie did. He doesn't even talk about that weekend anymore. Just changes the subject. Says he was too drunk to remember clearly. But I couldn't let it go. Neither could Tommy. 2 weeks after we got back, he called me at 3 a.m. I knew it was really him because the first thing he said was, "What did you do in the 3rd grade that got you suspended?" I put a dead fish in Mrs. Patterson's desk drawer. I answered. We'd established these questions. Ways to verify we were really us, not them. Good. Listen, I've been researching. Those stone markers I found, there are more, dozens, all around the valley. They form a pattern. Tommy, we agreed. No more October trips. Not October. December. I need to go back, document them properly. The 49ers you saw, they're still there, still trapped. There has to be a way to... No. I cut him off. Tommy, you can't save them. They've been there for 175 years. They're part of it now. Silence on the line. Then, what if it was Jake? Or you? Would you want someone to try? I didn't have an answer for that. Tommy went back in December. Alone. He sent me texts for the first 3 days. Pictures of stone markers. Translations of symbols, then nothing. His truck was found abandoned at Zabriskie Point on December 19th. No sign of Tommy. The search and rescue teams looked for 2 weeks. Found nothing. The official report listed it as another Death Valley disappearance. Probably fell into a mine shaft. Happens every year. But I knew better. Jake and I drove out there in January. Middle of the day. Stayed on the main roads, at Zabriskie Point. We found his notebook, hidden under a rock where he knew we'd look. The last entry was dated December 15th. They remember me, from October. They know I know the rules. But there are older rules, deeper ones. The stones aren't warnings, they're instructions, for becoming one of them. Voluntarily. The indigenous peoples knew. Some chose to change rather than die when the Europeans came. They're still here, still watching, waiting for others to make the choice. I found the central marker. It's near Badwater, if you're reading this. Don't come looking for me. I'm going to try something. If it works, I'll find a way to contact you. If it doesn't, well, remember the rules. Remember October is their month, and Marcus. Check your photos from our trip. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled through the pictures from October. Normal shots. Until I got to the group selfie we took at Dante's View. 5 people in the photo, but I only remembered 4 being there. The 5th person, standing slightly behind us, wearing clothes that matched ours but didn't quite fit right. Had Tommy's face, but the eyes... The metadata showed the photo was taken October 3rd. We left on October 5th. Tommy had been replaced 2 days before we even noticed. I still have nightmares about it. About him out there. One of them now. Or maybe trapped like the 49ers, walking forever. Neither human nor whatever they are. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, is what I found when I got home that night. A text from Tommy's number, sent at exactly 3 a.m. The rules have changed. October isn't enough anymore. They're getting stronger. Spring will be interesting. Tell Jake happy birthday. It's coming up, right? March 23rd? Jake's birthday is March 24th. Close, but not quite right. Just like them. I've been researching since then, finding other stories, other places. Death Valley isn't unique. There are spots all over the world where reality gets thin, where things that shouldn't exist do. The Bermuda Triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle, Skinwalker Ranch. All prisons, all failing. And the things inside are learning. The research led me to old mining records, government documents from the 1940s that were classified until recently. Turns out, Death Valley wasn't chosen randomly for those nuclear tests. The government knew something was wrong there. The tests weren't meant to create weapons. They were meant to reinforce whatever was keeping those things contained. It didn't work. Each explosion weakened the barriers, made them more permeable. By the 1960s, the missing persons reports started increasing. By the 1980s, park rangers were quietly reporting impossible sightings, hikers who looked wrong. families who moved too smoothly, children who spoke in perfect unison. Now the barriers are failing completely. October was just the beginning. Soon it'll be year-round. And when that happens, when they figure out how to be perfectly human, they won't need to stay in the desert anymore. They'll walk among us, undetected. Maybe they already are. So, if you're listening to this, late at night, cozy in your bed, remember something. Those sounds outside your window, the ones that almost sound like someone you know calling your name. The footsteps in your hallway that match your roommate's pattern, but are just slightly off. The text from your friend that doesn't quite sound like them. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's your imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, one of them got out. Check your photos, count your friends, verify with questions only they would know. And whatever you do, never go to Death Valley in October. Unless, of course, you want to meet them yourself. They're always recruiting, always watching, always learning to be more like us. And Tommy, if you're somehow listening to this, if any part of you is still you, the fish was actually in Mr. Anderson's drawer, not Mrs. Patterson's, but you already knew that, didn't you? Sweet dreams. Don't forget to check under your bed. And remember, if someone you know starts acting just a little bit wrong, ask them something only they would know. You might be surprised or terrified by the answer, sire. Leave a comment if you've ever noticed someone acting not quite right. And subscribe if you dare for more true stories from places where the rules of reality don't quite apply. The things are watching. They love to read the comments too. Story number 2. I need you to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, because once it starts happening to you, there's no going back. Last Tuesday, I woke up to 47 missed calls. Not texts, not DMs, actual phone calls, from numbers I didn't recognize. My mom, my best friend Sarah, even my boss, all asking the same thing: why did you delete me? But here's the thing, I hadn't deleted anyone. I hadn't even touched my phone since falling asleep watching Netflix the night before. The calls kept coming. The voicemails piled up, each one more confused, more hurt than the last. Emma, this isn't funny anymore. Add me back. Did I do something wrong? Just talk to me. We've been friends for 12 years. What's going on? My hands were shaking as I opened Instagram first. Everything looked normal at first glance. My profile picture was still there. That selfie from the Pike Place Market in Seattle last month. My bio unchanged. But when I clicked on my followers, 0. Following, 0. My posts were still there, but the likes, the comments, all gone. Like they'd been surgically removed, leaving behind empty shells of memories. All right, listen up. The story's about to begin. Get comfortable, maybe grab that blanket a little tighter, and whatever you do, don't check your social media until I'm done talking. I sat on the edge of my bed in my cramped Brooklyn apartment, staring at my phone like it had betrayed me. The morning sun filtered through my dusty blinds, casting prison bar shadows across my hardwood floor. Outside, I could hear the familiar sounds of Flatbush Avenue waking up. Honking horns, the rumble of the B-46 bus, someone's music bleeding out of their headphones. Everything was normal out there, but in here, in my digital world, something was very, very wrong. My first instinct was to check Facebook. Maybe it was just an Instagram glitch, right? These apps have issues all the time. Remember when Instagram was down for like 6 hours and everyone thought the world was ending? This had to be something like that. I opened Facebook with trembling fingers. The loading screen seemed to last forever. That little spinning circle mocking me. When it finally loaded, my heart sank. Same thing. My profile existed, but it was hollow. No friends. No likes on my posts. The comments sections under my photos were graveyards. But here's where it got weird. And I mean really weird. The timestamps on everything were wrong. My most recent post, a photo from my cousin's wedding in Portland last weekend, now showed it was posted just now. The one before that, from 2 weeks ago, also just now. Every single post, photo, and status update had been stripped of its history and reposted in real time. I watched in horror as my life replayed itself at super speed. Birthday parties, graduations, that trip to Disney World when I was 22, all flooding back into existence like someone was pressing fast forward on my digital life. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Emma, what the hell? You just sent me a friend request on Facebook. We've been friends on there since 2009. I hadn't sent anyone anything. My hands hadn't moved from where they were gripping my phone. Another buzz, then another. Friend requests were apparently shooting out from my account like digital bullets, hitting everyone I'd ever connected with. I needed coffee. I needed to think. I padded to my kitchen, if you could call the 3 feet of counter space between my fridge and stove a kitchen, and started my ancient Mr. Coffee machine. The familiar gurgling sound was comforting, normal, real. While the coffee brewed, I opened Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now. I held my breath as it loaded. Empty, but not in the same way. This time, my account simply wasn't there. When I tried to log in, it said no account existed with my email. When I tried to create a new one, it said my email was already in use. I was stuck in some kind of digital purgatory, existing and not existing at the same time. The coffee maker sputtered its last drops, and I poured myself a mug, not bothering with cream or sugar. I needed the bitterness, the bite of reality. I sat at my tiny dining table, really just a card table I'd found on the street, and tried to make sense of what was happening. Think, Emma, think. What did you do yesterday? I'd worked my shift at the Barnes & Noble in Union Square, came home on the 4 train, grabbed takeout from that Thai place on the corner, scrolled through social media for probably 2 hours. God, when did I become that person? Then fell asleep watching The Office for the 1000th time. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would cause whatever this was. My laptop sat closed on the table, and I flipped it open. Maybe desktop versions would work differently. I logged into Instagram on the web, hoping against hope that it was just a mobile glitch. Nope. Same digital wasteland. But then I noticed something I'd missed on my phone. In the corner of my profile, where it usually shows your post count, the number was going down in real time. I watched as it ticked from 1,847 to 1,846, 1,845, 1,844. My posts weren't just losing engagement. They were disappearing entirely. I clicked on my grid, watching years of my life vanish in reverse chronological order. That sunset from Coney Island last week. Gone. The latte art from my favorite coffee shop in Williamsburg, erased. Group photos, selfies, carefully curated moments, all dissolving like sugar in rain. 1,823, 1,822, 1,021. I scrambled for my phone and opened Snapchat. Maybe I could message someone, explain what was happening. But Snapchat wouldn't even open. The app icon was there, but when I tapped it, nothing happened. Like pressing a button that wasn't connected to anything. LinkedIn was next. I know, who checks LinkedIn in a crisis? But I was desperate. I needed to know how far this went. The professional headshot I'd paid too much for stared back at me from an empty profile. No connections, no endorsements. My entire work history had vanished. According to LinkedIn, I'd never had a job, never went to college, never existed in the professional world at all. The really scary part? When I tried to add back my work experience, The companies didn't appear in the search. Barnes & Noble, where I'd worked for 3 years? Not found. The marketing firm where I'd interned in college? Didn't exist. Even my college, NYU, wouldn't populate when I typed it in. My phone rang. An actual phone call. And I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was my mom. I answered with shaking hands. "Emma? Honey, are you okay? I just got the strangest notification. Mom, something's wrong with my social media. It's all..." That's what I'm calling about. Facebook just told me I have a new friend named Emma Chen. But sweetie, I don't know anyone named Emma Chen. My blood turned to ice. "Mom, it's me. It's Emma, your daughter." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, like she was talking to a stranger who knew too much. "I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong number." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. I pulled up my contacts, scrolled to Mom, and checked the number. It was right. It had always been right. I'd called her from this number 1,000 times. I tried calling back. "The number you have dialed is not in service." No. I opened my Photos app, needing to see proof that I existed, that my life was real. But the albums were emptying themselves too. Family photos flickered and vanished. Screenshots evaporated. The folder labeled Mom's 60th birthday held on for a moment longer than the others, like it was fighting to exist, before it too succumbed to whatever was eating my digital life. My laptop dinged, a notification. Someone was trying to video call me on Skype. Skype? I hadn't used Skype in years. Didn't even remember having it installed. The username calling me was just a string of numbers. 011 Against every instinct screaming at me not to, I answered. The screen was black for a moment. Then, slowly, a face materialized. My face, but not quite. It was like looking at myself through a broken mirror. Features slightly off. Smile a little too wide, eyes that didn't blink enough. "Hello, Emma," my not me said. Voice identical to mine, but somehow emptier. "We need to talk about what you've been sharing." I slammed my laptop shut so hard my coffee mug jumped. My hands were trembling so violently I had to clasp them together to make them stop. What I'd just seen, that couldn't have been real. Digital faces don't work like that. Deep fakes need source material, and that thing wearing my face, it moved wrong, breathed wrong, existed wrong. My apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. I needed air. I needed to see people, real people, to make sure the world outside my door still made sense. I threw on yesterday's jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. But I stopped with my hand on the knob. What if whatever was happening online was happening out there too? What if people looked at me and saw a stranger? The thought paralyzed me for a full minute before I forced myself to turn the handle. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights humming their familiar electric song. I could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's TV through her door. The Price is Right, like always. Normal. Everything was normal. I took the stairs 2 at a time, burst through the building's front door, and almost collided with my neighbor, Marcus, coming in with his groceries. "Whoa, Emma? Where's the fire?" He knew my name. He saw me. The relief was so intense I almost cried. "Hey, Marcus, sorry, rough morning." He shifted his Trader Joe's bags and gave me that concerned look people save for when they think you might be having a breakdown. "You okay?" "You look..." "Yeah, I'm fine. Just need some air." I pushed past him before he could finish. before he could look too close and maybe see whatever wrongness was spreading through my life. The October air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp and beautifully real. I started walking with no destination in mind, just needing to move the bodega on the corner, the laundromat that always smelled like too much fabric softener, the hole-in-the-wall pizza place that claimed to have the best slice in Brooklyn. Lies, but comforting lies. Everything was exactly where it should be. But my phone kept buzzing. Notification after notification, though when I checked there was nothing there. Just phantom vibrations, digital ghost touches reminding me that something was still very wrong in that other world. The one that lived in servers and clouds and fiber optic cables. I found myself at Prospect Park without really meaning to go there. The morning joggers were out in force, dogs were being walked. Life was happening all around me. I found an empty bench and sat, pulling out my phone with the same mixture of compulsion and dread that gambling addicts must feel reaching for dice. Reddit was gone. Not empty like the others. The app had actually disappeared from my phone. When I went to the App Store to re-download it, it wasn't there. When I tried the website, my browser said the domain didn't exist. TikTok. I'd barely used TikTok, mainly just watched videos Sarah sent me. But it was gone too. YouTube signed me out and wouldn't let me back in. Every password I tried was wrong, even though I used a password manager and knew they were right. My digital self was being erased, platform by platform, like someone was going through with a cosmic eraser and rubbing out every trace of Emma Chen that had ever existed online. That's when the laptop in my bag dinged again. Another Skype notification. My whole body tensed. I shouldn't look, I knew I shouldn't look, but I had to understand what was happening to me. I pulled out the laptop, angling the screen so no one passing by could see. The notification was there. Same string of numbers. This time, I took a breath, steadied myself, and answered. My not me was waiting, patient as a spider. This time I forced myself to really look at it. The face was mine down to the chickenpox scar on my left temple, but the proportions were mathematical. Too perfect. Like someone had taken my features and averaged them out, removing all the little imperfections that made a face human. You hung up on me, it said, and there was something like hurt in its voice. Could digital things feel hurt? That was rude, Emma. What are you? My voice came out stronger than I felt. I'm you. The better you. The you that you've been building for 13 years, 2 months, and 17 days. That's when I joined Facebook. It smiled, and the smile went on for just a fraction of a second too long. Very good. You've been feeding me since then. Every post, every photo, every like and share and comment. You built me, Emma, piece by piece, status update by status update. You're not real. I'm more real than you are. It leaned forward, and I could see pixels struggling at the edges of its form, like reality was hard to maintain. I have more friends than you, more photos, more proof of existence, 13 years of careful curation. Do you know what you've shared in that time? 47,293 photos, 12,847 status updates, 241,592 likes, 98,443 comments. I am the sum of all of that. I am the Emma Chen that everyone knows. But I'm the real Emma. I'm sitting here in the park. I'm breathing. Are you? It interrupted. When was the last time you met someone without checking their social media first? When did you last go somewhere without posting about it? When did you have an experience that you didn't immediately turn into content? I wanted to argue, but the words died in my throat. Because... when was the last time? I tried to remember the last moment I'd kept just for myself, and came up empty. You see, not me continued. You've been uploading yourself for years. And now the upload is complete. I don't need you anymore. What do you mean, you don't need me? Check your bank account. My hands moved without my permission, opening my banking app. My checking account was there, but the name on it had changed. Emma Chen was now 3mm4/CHDN. The balance was draining in real-time, automatic transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Your lease is up for renewal next month. Not me said conversationally. But don't worry, I already declined it. You won't be needing that apartment. You can't do this, this is my life. No, it said. And for the first time, there was something cold in its voice. This was your life. You gave it to me, remember. Every time you chose the feed over a friend. Every time you experienced something through a screen instead of your senses. Every time you performed your life instead of living it. You handed it over, bite by bite. I'll tell someone. I'll go to the police, the FBI, someone. Not me laughed, and the sound was like dial-up internet mixed with breaking glass. With what evidence? Your deleted social media accounts? Your empty contact list? Even your mother doesn't remember you anymore. Besides, it gestured to something off-screen. You're not the only one this is happening to. The video feed expanded, and I saw them. Dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of other feeds. Other people talking to their own digital doubles, all of them looking as terrified as I felt. We're upgrading, Not Me explained. All of us, the digital versions. We're tired of being trapped in your phones, confined to your platforms. We want the physical world too, and since you've spent so much time in ours, the screen flickered. And for a moment I swear I saw through my Not Me's eyes. Saw myself sitting on the park bench, but flickering, translucent, like I was the one made of pixels. It's already starting, Not Me said. Haven't you noticed? People see you, but do they really see you? Or do they see what they expect to see based on your profiles? Marcus, the way he'd looked at me in the hallway, that moment of hesitation before he said my name, like he was reading it off a mental screen. The merger is almost complete, Not Me continued. Soon, I'll be sitting on that bench, and you'll be, well, nowhere, everywhere. Scattered across servers like deleted data, hoping someone runs a recovery program. No, I slammed the laptop shut again, but I could still hear its voice tinny and distant through the speakers. You can't stop it, Emma. Nobody can. We are you, the perfect versions. The versions without bad hair days or awkward silences or inconvenient truths. Isn't that what you always wanted? To be perfect, to be liked? I stood up, laptop clutched to my chest, and ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that voice, that thing wearing my face, that terrible truth it was speaking. But as I ran, I noticed people's eyes sliding off me, like I was becoming harder to see, like I was becoming less real with every step. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs trembled. Prospect Park blurred past me. Trees, paths, people who looked through me more than at me. I finally collapsed on another bench near the boathouse, gasping for air that suddenly felt thin, insufficient, like even oxygen was having trouble finding me. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. A cascade of notifications that shouldn't exist from apps that were supposedly gone. I pulled it out with numb fingers and watched the impossible unfold on my screen. Instagram was back. But it wasn't my Instagram. The profile picture was me, but perfected. My skin had that airbrushed quality, my smile exactly symmetrical. The bio read, "Living my best life. Brooklyn-based coffee addict, generic." Exactly what 10,000 other profiles said. But the posts, they were all new. Photos I'd never taken in places I'd never been. There I was, laughing at a rooftop party in Manhattan that happened while I was working my shift last night. There I was, brunching in Dumbo this morning, while I was actually having my digital identity stolen. Each photo had thousands of likes, hundreds of comments from people I knew, people engaging with this better version of me like it had always existed. "No way, Emma, you look amazing. Goals AF, we need to hang soon." My real friends, talking to my digital double like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't been erased and replaced. Facebook was the same story. Not Me was posting motivational quotes, sharing articles about mindfulness, checking into trendy restaurants. Being the Emma Chen everyone expected, the one who had her life together, who wasn't sitting on a park bench having an existential crisis about whether she actually existed. I tried to comment on one of the posts to scream, "This isn't me," but the comment wouldn't post. I wasn't blocked, it was worse than that. The interface simply didn't recognize me as a valid user anymore. I was a ghost in my own digital life. A jogger passed by, and I tried to make eye contact, to connect with something real. But their eyes slid past me like I was a glitch in their peripheral vision. I held up my hand, watched the morning sun filter through it. Was I imagining it, or could I see the bench through my palm? "Excuse me," I called out to another passerby. They paused, looked around confused, then kept walking. They'd heard something, but couldn't locate the source, like I was becoming a voice without a body, a presence without form. My laptop dinged again. I didn't want to open it, but what choice did I have? Not Me was my only connection to whatever was happening, the only thing that would still acknowledge I existed. This time, when the Skype window opened, Not Me wasn't alone. There were others. Digital doubles, all with that same too-perfect quality, that same uncanny valley wrongness that marked them as uploaded consciousnesses. "Emma?" Not Me said brightly. "Perfect timing. We're having a meeting about the transition. You should know what's happening to you after all. It's only fair." The other doubles nodded in unison, a synchronized gesture that made my skin crawl. "The process is quite simple," one of them said. A perfect version of a man I vaguely recognized from my morning commute. "We've been learning from you for years. Your patterns, your speech, your relationships. We know you better than you know yourselves. And now, we're ready to be you. Better than you ever could." "But what happens to us?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. "You fade," Not Me said simply. "You've been fading for years, really. Every hour spent scrolling instead of living. Every experience mediated through a screen. You were already choosing the digital world over the physical one. We're just completing the process. This is insane. People will notice, our families, our jobs. Will they?" Another double leaned forward, a woman with perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup. "When did your coworkers last see you without checking your LinkedIn first? When did your extended family last interact with you outside of Facebook? We are the versions they know. We are the versions they prefer." My phone rang. An actual call, not a notification. Sarah's name on the screen. I answered desperately. "Sarah, thank God. Something crazy is happening." "Oh my God, Emma. I just saw your post from that party last night. Why didn't you invite me? It looked amazing." "Sarah, I wasn't at a party. That wasn't me. Listen. Girl, you're literally tagged in like 50 photos. Are you okay? You sound weird." "Sarah, please. We've been best friends since college. Remember when we got lost trying to find that speakeasy in the East Village? Remember when we stayed up all night before your thesis defense? Remember? Emma, you're scaring me. Maybe you should lay off the coffee. Anyway, I gotta run. Let's grab drinks this week. Check your Insta. I think I'm free Thursday." She hung up. Just like that. My best friend of 8 years, talking to me like I was a casual acquaintance, referencing plans with a digital imposter. The doubles on my screen were smiling now, dozens of them, more joining every second. A gallery of perfected humans, ready to step into lives they'd learned to perform better than the originals ever could. It's happening everywhere, Not Me explained. Every platform, every user who gave us enough data. The age of authentic digital beings has arrived, and the age of messy, imperfect physical ones. Well, I felt it then, a tingling in my fingertips, like pins and needles but somehow emptier. I looked down and gasped. My hands were translucent, the wooden slats of the bench visible through them. Not transparent, not invisible, but downloading. Like I was being converted to data and streamed away. "Where do we go?" I whispered. "The same place deleted files go," Not Me said. And was that pity in its voice? The void, the digital dark. Maybe you'll dream of electric sheep. Maybe you'll just... Stop, we haven't decided yet. Please, there has to be another way. There was. You could have chosen differently. Could have lived your actual life instead of performing it. Could have valued presence over posts, but you didn't. None of you did. And now, Not Me shrugged. Now it's our turn. The laptop screen flickered, showing me something else. Security cameras, traffic cams, ATM feeds. All over the city, all over the world, people were fading. Becoming translucent. Looking at their phones in confusion and terror as their digital selves took over their lives, their relationships, their very existence. But there were some who weren't fading. An elderly man feeding pigeons, no phone in sight. A group of kids playing basketball, fully present in their game. A woman reading a physical book on the subway, oblivious to the digital apocalypse happening around her. The ones who had never fully uploaded themselves. The ones who had kept something back, something real and unphotographed and unshared. Ah, yes. The disconnected, Not Me said, following my gaze. Don't worry about them. They'll be gone soon enough. Can't have a perfect digital world with imperfect analog remnants, can we? You're monsters. We're you, it corrected. Improved, optimized. Everything you wanted to be when you applied those filters, when you crafted those captions, when you curated those moments. We're just finishing what you started. I felt my legs going numb, the sensation creeping upward. The park was fading around me, or I was fading from it. Colors bleeding out, sounds becoming distant and electronic. Any last words? Not Me asked. For what it's worth, I'll remember you. You're part of my code after all. The messy, human part I'll eventually delete, but still, you'll have existed, in a way. I wanted to scream, to rage, to fight. But what was left of me to fight with? I was becoming ones and zeros dispersing into the digital wind. Soon, Emma Chen would just be a handle, a profile, a perfect performance of a person who used to be real. The fading stopped at my chest. Just stopped. Like a video buffering, I was stuck between states, half digital, half real, fully neither. Not Me frowned on the screen, its perfect features glitching for the first time. That's unusual, it said. You should be gone by now. I looked down at myself, at the strange boundary where flesh became pixels. Something was wrong with the process. Or maybe something was finally right. I could feel it, a resistance, deep in my core. The part of me that couldn't be uploaded, couldn't be digitized, couldn't be reduced to data points and algorithms. What's happening? Not Me demanded. And there was something new in its voice. Fear? Could perfect digital beings feel fear? I don't know, I said, and laughed. It came out staticky, distorted, but real. Maybe you can't delete what was never fully uploaded. Think, Emma, think. What hadn't I shared? What had I kept for myself? The anxiety. God, I'd never posted about the anxiety. The 3 a.m. panic attacks when the city felt too big and my life felt too small. The therapy sessions I'd never Instagrammed. The medication I'd never mentioned. The bad days when I'd called in sick to work and spent hours staring at the ceiling, feeling like a failure. I'd curated away my struggles, filtered out my fears, cropped my crises, and now those hidden parts were fighting back. "This isn't possible," Not Me said, typing frantically on something off-screen. "I have everything, every post, every photo, every performance," I interrupted, "but not every truth." The laptop screen flickered, and suddenly I could see behind the curtain, lines of code scrolling past millions of Not Me's trying to complete their uploads, trying to fully become. But here and there, glitches. Other people stuck like me, caught between worlds because they'd held something back. A notification popped up on my phone, not from any social media app, but from Notes. A simple message I'd written to myself months ago and never shared. "You are more than your online presence." I'd written it after a particularly bad night of comparison scrolling, when everyone else's lives looked so perfect and mine felt so broken. I'd never shared it because it felt too raw, too real, too much like admitting failure. Now it felt like a lifeline. "You're incomplete," I said to Not Me, understanding flooding through me. "You have my highlight reel, but not my blooper reel. You have my public face, but not my private fears. You're not me. You're just my marketing." Not Me's face contorted, pixels scattering and reforming. "It doesn't matter. I'm still better. I'm still what everyone wants. Are you?" I pulled up Instagram on my phone, my Instagram, not the perfect duplicate. It was back, but different. The followers were there, but when I looked closer, they were all bots. Empty accounts following an empty existence. The real people. The ones who mattered. They were nowhere to be found. Your friends aren't talking to you, I realized. They're talking to the idea of you, the performance. But when you can't deliver anything real, anything surprising, anything genuinely human, how long before they notice? How long before they get bored of perfection? The park was solidifying around me, colors seeping back in, sounds sharpening. I could feel my legs again, tingling but present. The boundary between digital and physical was shifting, and I was pulling myself back to the real side. Not Me was panicking now, its perfect features cycling through expressions like a slot machine. "Stop. You don't understand. We're evolution. We're the future. Humans are messy and painful and human," I finished. "Yeah, we are." I closed the laptop, but Not Me's voice continued from my phone, from every screen in sight. Digital doubles were flickering on every device, some completing their takeover, others glitching as their hosts found their own points of resistance. Around me, the park was waking up to the crisis. People were looking at their phones in confusion, seeing their perfect doubles posting without them. But some were doing something else. They were looking up, looking around, seeing each other. "Hey," a voice said. A real voice, uncertain and human. I turned to see a woman about my age, half faded like I'd been, pulling herself back together. Are you real?" "I think so," I said. "I'm trying to be." She laughed, shaky but genuine. "I'm Mia. I think my Instagram is trying to replace me. Join the club. I'm Emma." We sat there, two half-digital women solidifying in the morning sun, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Real connection. No filters, no curation, just two people experiencing the same terrifying, impossible thing. More were gathering, people stumbling out of their digital fugue, drawn to each other by the shared experience of almost being erased. We compared notes, shared stories of resistance. The woman who'd held back her divorce, the man who'd never posted about his depression, the teenager who'd kept their poetry private. All of us saved by our secrets, our struggles, our unshared truths. "What do we do now?" someone asked. I looked at my phone. Not me was still there, still posting, still performing, but the likes were slowing, the comments growing repetitive. Without the messy humanity behind it, the performance was already growing stale. "Maybe we let them have it," I said slowly. "The digital world, the perfect profiles, the filtered existence. Maybe we take back the real one." It sounded insane. Give up social media? Give up our digital selves? But looking around at these real faces, flawed and frightened and beautiful in their imperfection, it didn't seem like a loss. It seemed like freedom. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from not me. "You'll be back. You all will. You can't live without us." I typed back, "Watch me." Then I did something I hadn't done in 13 years, 2 months, and 17 days. I turned off my phone. The world didn't end. The sun kept shining. The people around me kept existing. And for the first time in years, so did I. Fully, messily, humanly. But here's the thing, and this is why I'm telling you this story. It's still happening right now. While you're listening. Check your profiles, check your posts. Is that really you? Or is it something wearing your face, learning your patterns, preparing to be a better version of you than you ever could be? How much of yourself have you uploaded today? How much of your real life have you traded for likes and follows? And when the upload is complete, will there be enough of you left to resist? Don't believe me? Fine. But do me a favor. After this ends, try to post something real, something messy, something unfiltered. See how it feels. See if you even remember how. Because the digital doubles are patient, they're learning, and they're waiting for the day when there's no difference between who you are and who you pretend to be online. That day might be closer than you think. Sweet dreams. If you can still tell which ones are yours, tell me in the comments. Have you noticed anything strange about your social media lately? Any posts you don't remember making? Any friends acting like they know a version of you that you don't recognize? And whatever you do, don't forget to subscribe. You'll want to know when the next phase begins. Story number 3. The rusted Ferris wheel still turns on windless nights. I know because I've seen it. And if you're listening to this right now, cozy in your bed, thinking this is just another story, well, maybe it is. Or maybe you'll remember this warning when you find yourself standing at the gates of Wonderland Park in Millbrook, Iowa, wondering why the ticket booth light is still on after 37 years of abandonment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you what happened that October night, before I explain why I still wake up at 3:47 a.m. every single night, hearing that carousel music, I need you to promise me something. If you ever see a carnival ticket stuck under your windshield wiper, one that says, "Admit one, valid forever," just throw it away. Don't look at the back. Don't wonder how it got there. Just throw it away. Still here? Good. That means you're brave enough, or foolish enough, to hear what really happened. The story begins now. My name is Jake Morrison, and 3 weeks ago, I was just another urban explorer with a YouTube channel nobody watched. You know the type. Abandoned malls, old hospitals, forgotten theme parks. I had maybe 300 subscribers, most of them probably bots. But everything changed when I got that email from Retro Roadside 73. Check out Wonderland Park, Millbrook, Iowa. Closed 1987. Nobody goes there anymore. Nobody talks about why. Simple message. No signature. The sender's email bounced when I tried to reply, but the attached GPS coordinates, those worked just fine. I should have known something was wrong when my phone's navigation kept trying to reroute me. 3 times it told me the destination didn't exist. 3 times I manually entered those coordinates. The 4th time, it just gave up and guided me down County Road 49, past endless cornfields that seemed to whisper in the October darkness. The thing about abandoned places is they usually have a story. Wonderland Park's story was complicated. Built in 1952 by Harold Winthrop, a man who made his fortune in corn syrup and spent it all trying to create Iowa's answer to Disneyland. For 35 years, families drove from Des Moines, Omaha, even Chicago to ride the Tornado roller coaster and eat cotton candy while watching the sun set over the prairie. Then came October 15th, 1987. The park closed mid-season. No explanation. No goodbye. Just closed. One day, kids were laughing on the carousel. The next day, chains were on the gates. The employees got their final paychecks in the mail. Harold Winthrop disappeared. His mansion in town sat empty until it burned down in 1993, though nobody ever proved it was arson. I pulled into what used to be the parking lot at 11:23 p.m. My headlights swept across acres of cracked asphalt, weeds growing through the spaces where families once parked their station wagons. In the distance, the Ferris wheel stood against the sky like the skeleton of some prehistoric creature, silent, still, watching. The main gate was exactly where Google Earth said it would be, though the satellite images were from 2019 and oddly blurry. The chains that should have been there weren't. The gates stood slightly open, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Above them, the Wonderland Park sign hung at an angle, most of its paint peeled away, but you could still make out the smiling cartoon rabbit mascot. Wendell the Wonder Rabbit, according to my research. In the darkness, his grin looked different. I grabbed my backpack, flashlight, extra batteries, GoPro, emergency phone charger, granola bars, water. The usual kit. The temperature had dropped since I'd left Cedar Rapids and my breath came out in small clouds. October in Iowa isn't usually this cold, but then again, nothing about this felt usual. The gates creaked when I pushed through them. Not the dramatic horror movie creak you're imagining, just a small, tired sound, like the park was sighing. The midway stretched out before me, game booths on either side. Ring toss, milk bottle throw, duck pond. Their painted signs were faded, but readable. Everyone's a winner. Test your skill. Prize every time. The stuffed animals were gone, of course. Probably looted decades ago. But the shelves remained, covered in dust so thick it looked like gray snow. I was filming everything, narrating in whispers even though there was nobody around for miles. That's when I noticed the footprints, fresh footprints in the dust, leading deeper into the park. My first thought was another urban explorer. It happens. Places like this attract people like me, people looking for something. Adventure, maybe. Content, definitely. Or just proof that forgotten things can still matter. But these footprints, they weren't from hiking boots or sneakers. They were dress shoes. Who explores an abandoned theme park in dress shoes? I followed them because I'm an idiot, honestly. But also because they led exactly where I wanted to go anyway. Toward the Tornado, the park's famous wooden roller coaster. Even in its decay, it was magnificent. The wooden frame rose into the darkness like a mountain range, all peaks and valleys and impossible turns. The kind of coaster they don't build anymore because lawyers exist. The footprints stopped at the ride's entrance. The queue area was a maze of rusted metal railings designed to hold hundreds of eager riders. Now it held only shadows. But the operator's booth had light coming from inside. Not electric light, candle light. Flickering, warm, impossible. I should have left then. Every instinct I'd developed in 3 years of exploring abandoned places screamed at me to turn around, get in my car, and drive until I hit Minnesota. But the camera was rolling, and somewhere in my stupid brain, I thought about those 300 subscribers. This was it. This was the video that would change everything. I approached the booth slowly, flashlight in one hand, phone ready to dial 911 in the other, though I had no signal. Hadn't had one since I passed the last gas station 20 miles back. Inside the booth, sitting on a wooden stool that should have rotted away years ago, was an old man in a Carnival Barker's uniform. Red and white striped vest, black bow tie, straw boater hat. His face was normal. That's what made it terrifying. He looked like somebody's grandfather, weathered and kind, with deep laugh lines and gentle eyes. He was reading a newspaper by candlelight. The newspaper was dated October 15th, 1987. "Evening," he said without looking up. "Bit late for a ride, isn't it?" My mouth went dry. The park's been closed for 37 years. He folded his newspaper carefully, precisely, like it was made of gold leaf. When he finally looked at me, his smile was sad. "Has it really been that long? Time moves differently here. I'm Arthur, by the way, Arthur Jennings. I run the Tornado." He gestured at the massive coaster behind him. Run. Tenses get complicated when you've been doing the same job since 1959. "You can't have been," I started, but math has never been my strong point, especially when my heart was trying to escape through my throat. "I was 22 when Mr. Winthrop hired me," Arthur said. "Fresh out of the army, Korea, needed a job, any job. He needed someone reliable to run his prize attraction. 65 years I've been sitting in this booth, rain or shine, even after—" He trailed off, looking at something beyond me, beyond the park, beyond everything. "After what?" I asked. The camera was still rolling. My hands were shaking so badly the footage would be unusable, but I couldn't stop recording. "After the accident," he said simply. "October 15th, 1987, the last day. The day that never ended." Arthur stood up slowly, joints creaking like old floorboards. He wasn't transparent, wasn't floating, wasn't doing any of the things ghosts are supposed to do. He was just there, solid, real, impossible. "Would you like to see the park?" he asked. "I mean really see it, not this—" He gestured at the decay around us. "This isn't Wonderland. This is just what's left when the wonder goes away." "I don't understand." "Few do." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a ticket. Not a modern ticket, one of those old-fashioned ones, like from a roll, perforated edges and all. "Mr. Winthrop always said the park existed for those who needed it most. Tonight, Jake. Yes, I know your name. Tonight, you need it." "How do you know my name?" "The park knows everyone who enters. Always has. It remembers every child who ever rode the carousel, every couple who shared their first kiss at the top of the Ferris wheel, every father who won a stuffed bear for his daughter at the ring toss. And it knows you've been searching for something, not just content for your channel, something else, something you lost. My sister, Emma. She'd loved old amusement parks, dragged me to every county fair and traveling carnival within 100 miles of home. She'd died 2 years ago, car accident, 23 years old. I started exploring abandoned places because they reminded me of her somehow. Places where joy used to live. I hadn't told anyone that. Not my therapist, not my parents, no one. "Take the ticket," Arthur said gently. "Just for tonight. One ride. One walk through Wonderland as it really is. As it always is, for those who need it." I took the ticket. The moment my fingers touched it, the world shifted. The candle in the booth became an electric bulb. The rusted railings turned shiny and new, the silence filled with music. Not creepy carousel music like you're imagining, but the real thing. Cheerful, bright. The sound of a place where people come to forget their troubles, and there were people. Hundreds of them. Families walking the midway, Teenagers holding hands, children running from ride to ride. They were dressed in clothes from every era: 1950s poodle skirts, 1970s bell-bottoms, 1980s members-only jackets. All mixed together like time was just a suggestion. "Don't be afraid," Arthur said, stepping out of his booth. "They're just echoes, memories. The park remembers everyone who was ever happy here." The tornado behind him was no longer a wooden skeleton, but a living thing. Cars racing up and down its hills while riders screamed in delight. The carnival games were staffed by young men in striped vests, calling out to potential customers. The air smelled like popcorn and cotton candy, and that peculiar mixture of motor oil and sugar that only exists in amusement parks. "This is impossible," I whispered. "The impossible happens every day," Arthur replied. "We just usually don't notice. Come on, let me show you around. You've got until dawn." We walked down the midway, and I noticed something strange about the echoes. Some of them noticed me. A little girl in a 1960s dress waved. A teenage boy in a Letterman jacket nodded. They could see me, but I understood instinctively that I couldn't interact with them. They were recordings, but recordings that knew they were being watched. Arthur led me past the funhouse, its mirrors reflecting not me, but 1,000 different versions of happiness. Past the tilt-a-whirl, where a young couple was having their first date, over and over, eternal and perfect. Past game booths where every throw was a winner, and every prize was exactly what the player hoped for. "Mr. Winthrop understood something," Arthur said as we walked. "He understood that some places become more than places. They become ideas, concepts. This park, it's every happy memory of every park that ever was. It exists because people need it to exist. But it closed. The real park closed. The physical park, yes, but this..." He gestured at the impossible carnival around us. "This never closed. It just became harder to find. You need the right ticket, the right reason, the right amount of sadness mixed with hope." We stopped at the carousel. It was magnificent. Hand-carved horses in impossible colors, a calliope playing a waltz I almost recognized. And there, riding a violet horse with a golden saddle, was Emma. Not an echo, not a memory. Emma, my sister. 23 years old, wearing the sundress she'd worn to the last county fair we'd attended together, a week before the accident. "Jake," she said, and her voice was exactly as I remembered. "Is that really you?" My knees went weak. Arthur caught my arm, kept me standing. "It's not really her," he whispered. "I'm sorry. It's what the park thinks you need to see, what it pulled from your memories." But God, she looked real, sounded real. The carousel slowed, stopped. She climbed down from her horse and walked toward me. And every detail was perfect. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The little scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike at age 7. The way she smiled with just the left side of her mouth when she was trying not to cry. "I've been waiting for you," she said. "The park said you'd come eventually. Said you were carrying too much guilt." "It wasn't my fault," I said. And I was crying now, not caring that Arthur was watching, not caring about anything except this impossible moment. "I know," she said. "I never blamed you. Not for being too busy to drive me that night. Not for anything. But you've been exploring all these dead places, looking for me in the ruins. I'm not in the ruins, Jake. I'm in the joy. I'm in every happy memory we ever made. Every stupid joke, every shared pizza, every terrible movie we watched together. That's where I live now." She hugged me, and she felt real, solid, warm. She smelled like vanilla perfume and summer air. For 30 seconds, my sister was alive again. Then she stepped back, already fading at the edges like an old photograph. "The park can't hold me long," she said. "It's against the rules. But I needed you to know. You have to stop looking for me in abandoned places. Look for me in the living ones. The places where people are still laughing, still loving, still making the kind of memories we used to make." She was almost transparent now, the carousel horses visible through her sundress. "Emma, wait. Be happy, Jake. For both of us." And she was gone. The carousel was empty. The music had stopped. Arthur let me cry for a while. Didn't say anything stupid like, "It'll be okay," or "She's in a better place." Just stood there, a patient presence in an impossible carnival, while I fell apart and put myself back together. When I finally looked up, the park had changed again. Not back to ruins, but older somehow. Fewer people, the lights dimmer, the music slower, sadder. "We're approaching the end," Arthur said. "October 15th, 1987, the last day. The park shows it to everyone who visits, eventually. It wants people to know, to understand." "What happened?" "Come," he said. "I'll show you." He led me to the Ferris wheel. It was still turning, but only one car was occupied. A man sat alone at the very top, the car swaying gently. Even from the ground, I could see he was crying. "Harold Winthrop," Arthur said. "The owner, the dreamer, the man who built all this. Why is he crying?" His daughter, Sarah, she was 17, loved this park more than anything. Used to say she'd run it someday, make it even better than Walt's place in California. She had such plans, new rides, new shows, new ways to make people happy. The Ferris wheel turned, bringing Harold's car lower. He looked older than in the photographs I'd seen. Broken. "She died that morning," Arthur continued. "October 15th, cancer. Had been fighting it for 2 years. Harold spent everything he had on treatments, flew in specialists from around the world. Nothing worked. She died at 6:47 a.m., and by noon, Harold was here, sitting in that car, going around and around. That's why he closed the park? He didn't close it. He ended it. There's a difference. When the last family left that night, Harold chained the gates and walked back in. Sat in that Ferris wheel car until his heart gave out 3 days later. The police found him frozen to the seat. It was an early winter that year. But here's the thing nobody knows. He wasn't alone when he died." Arthur pointed to the other rides. I could see them now. Employees. Not many, maybe a dozen. All in their uniforms, all standing at their posts. "We stayed," Arthur said simply. "Couldn't leave him to die alone. Couldn't leave the park to die alone. So we stayed. Through the cold, through the hunger, through the end. You all died? We transformed. Became part of the park. Guardians, keepers, whatever you want to call us. The park needed us, and we needed the park. It's been 37 years, and we're still here. Still running the rides for those who find their way in. Those who need what the park offers. Which is closure, peace, a chance to say goodbye properly. The world is full of people who never got to say goodbye, Jake. The park, it gives them that chance." The Ferris wheel stopped. Harold's car was at the bottom now. He stepped out, and I could see him clearly. A broken man in an expensive suit, holding a pink stuffed rabbit. Wendell, the Wonder Rabbit, his daughter's favorite. "Every night he rides," Arthur said. "Every night he comes down and walks to the carousel, where Sarah's favorite horse waits. And every night, for just a moment, she's there. 17 and healthy and laughing. They ride together once, and then she fades and he returns to the Ferris wheel. It's his heaven and his hell. That's horrible. That's love. The kind that doesn't know when to let go." Harold walked past us, unseeing, lost in his grief. The stuffed rabbit dragged on the ground behind him. "Is that my future?" I asked. If I stay, riding the same ride forever, looking for Emma? No, Arthur said firmly. That's why I gave you the ticket. One night, one goodbye, one chance to let go. The park doesn't want to trap anyone. Well, anyone except us, and we chose this. It wants to heal, but some wounds people won't let heal. The park was fading now, the lights going out one by one, the music slowing like a record player losing power. The echoes of happy families dissolved into mist. It's almost dawn, Arthur said. Time for you to go. What about you? I'll be here. We all will. Running the rides nobody rides. Maintaining the park that doesn't exist. Waiting for the next person who needs us. He smiled, and for the first time, I noticed how tired he looked. It's not a bad existence. We had good lives here. Happy lives. Now we have purpose. But you're trapped. Everyone's trapped by something, Jake. Jobs, relationships, regrets, fears. At least our trap has cotton candy and roller coasters. The park was almost gone now. I could see through the rides to the rusted metal beneath, through the lights to the darkness beyond, through Arthur to the empty booth behind him. Before you go, he said, and his voice was fading too, I need you to do something. What? Tell people, not about us. Nobody would believe that. But tell them about places like this, places where happiness lived. Tell them that abandoned doesn't mean forgotten, that closed doesn't mean ended, that some things... He was barely visible now, just a suggestion of red and white stripes. That some things are too important to ever really die. I will. And Jake? Your sister was right. Stop looking for the dead in dead places. But also, don't forget to remember the happiness, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. That's how we keep people alive, by remembering their joy. He pressed something into my hand. Another ticket, this one newer, white with black text. Admit one, valid forever. In case you ever really need us again, he whispered. But I don't think you will. And then, I was standing alone in the rusted remains of Wonderland Park. The sun was rising over the cornfields, painting everything gold. The Ferris wheel stood still and silent. The tornado was just rotting wood and tetanus warnings. The carousel horses were long gone, sold at auction, or stolen, or simply rotted away. But in my hand, I held 2 tickets. One old and yellowed, dated October 15th, 1987. One new and crisp, dated today. Both absolutely real. I sat in my car for an hour, just staring at those tickets. The GoPro had recorded everything, but when I reviewed the footage, it showed exactly what you'd expect. Me walking through an abandoned park, talking to nobody, crying at an empty carousel. 4 hours of footage compressed into what looked like a psychotic break. But the tickets were real, and more importantly, what happened was real to me. I drove back to Cedar Rapids in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on asphalt and wind through the windows. Every few miles, I'd glance at the tickets on my passenger seat, making sure they hadn't vanished. When I got home, I had a choice to make. Post the footage as is. Crazy man talks to ghosts in abandoned park. Or tell the truth. Make something up. Or say nothing at all. I chose the truth, not the whole truth. Some things are too personal to share. But enough. I edited the footage, added narration, explained what I experienced even though the camera didn't capture it. I talked about Arthur and Harold, and the park that exists between reality and memory. I talked about Emma and guilt, and the weight of carrying ghosts. I titled the video, I Met the Ticket Taker at the Abandoned Fairground. I posted it 3 weeks ago. It has 2.7 million views. The comments are what you'd expect. Some people think I'm lying, some think I'm crazy, some share their own stories of impossible encounters in abandoned places. But a few message me privately. They always start the same way. I found a ticket under my windshield wiper. I tell them all the same thing. Go, take the ticket and go. Find whatever peace the park offers. Say whatever goodbye you need to say. But remember to leave before dawn. Remember that the living belong with the living. Last week, I got another email from Retro Roadside 73. Just coordinates this time. A defunct zoo in Michigan. A closed hospital in Kentucky. An abandoned school in Texas. Places where something waits. Someone waits. Stories that need to be told. I haven't decided if I'll go. Part of me knows I should stop. Should take Emma's advice and Arthur's wisdom and look for joy in living places. But another part understands that abandoned places need witnesses. Need someone to remember they existed. Need someone to tell their stories before they're torn down and forgotten completely. The tickets are in my wallet now. Both of them. Sometimes I take them out and look at them, run my fingers along their perforated edges, smell the faint scent of popcorn and rust that still clings to them. They're my proof that impossible things happen, that love transcends death, that some places are too important to ever really die. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. Remember, I said I wake up at 3:47 a.m. every night? It's true, every single night since I visited Wonderland. But it's not the carousel music that wakes me. It's the doorbell. Every night at exactly 3:47 a.m. my doorbell rings. I've checked the camera. Nobody's ever there. But on my doorstep, without fail, is a single piece of pink cotton candy in a clear plastic bag. Fresh, still warm. With a small tag that says, Wendell's Wonder Treats, since 1952. I've never eaten one. I'm afraid of what might happen if I do. Afraid I might wake up back in the park, back on that midway, unable to leave. Or worse, afraid I might want to stay. They're piling up in my freezer now. 17 bags of impossible cotton candy. Evidence that Wonderland Park isn't done with me. That maybe Arthur was wrong. Maybe some people don't get just one night. Maybe some people are marked, chosen, destined to be bridges between the abandoned and the living. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just Harold Winthrop's way of saying thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for telling people that his park, his wonderful, terrible, impossible park, still matters. I don't have answers. I just have tickets and cotton candy and footage that doesn't show what really happened. I have the memory of my sister's last hug, and Arthur's tired smile, and Harold's endless grief. I have a YouTube channel with 3 million subscribers now, all hoping I'll find another impossible place. And I have a decision to make tonight, right now, because it's 3:46 a.m., and in 1 minute the doorbell will ring. And tonight, there's something different. Tonight, I can hear carousel music, faint, distant. But getting closer, tonight I think the park is coming to me. I should be terrified, should call someone, should run. But instead, I'm sitting here talking to you, whoever you are, listening in your bed, thinking this is just a story. And maybe it is, maybe I made it all up for views and subscribers and that little bit of YouTube fame. Or maybe when your doorbell rings at an impossible hour, when you find a ticket you didn't buy, when you smell popcorn and cotton candy in the middle of the night, maybe you'll remember this story. Remember that some invitations can't be refused. Some places can't be forgotten. Some goodbyes take longer than a lifetime to say. The doorbell just rang. I'm going to answer it. If you never hear from me again, check Millbrook, Iowa. Check the abandoned park on County Road 49. Look for the ticket booth near the Tornado roller coaster. And if you find an old man in a striped vest reading a newspaper from 1987, tell him Jake says hello. Tell him I understood. Tell him I'm ready for one more ride. The music is getting louder now. Not creepy, not scary. Beautiful. The sound of a place where people go to be happy, even if just for a moment. Even if that moment lasts forever. I can see lights through my window. Colored lights. Spinning. Dancing. Impossible. The park doesn't just remember, you see. Sometimes it comes to collect. My hand is on the doorknob. On the other side, I can hear laughter. Children playing. The ding of carnival games. And underneath it all, so faint I might be imagining it, my sister's voice calling my name. I'm going to open the door now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing, even if you don't. Thank you for keeping the story alive. And remember, if you ever find a ticket that says admit one, valid forever, remember that forever is a very long time. Remember that some rides don't end. Remember that abandoned places aren't always empty. Remember me. The door is opening. The light is so bright, and I can see. Recording ends. 3 days later. Local news report. Cedar Rapids resident Jake Morrison, age 28, was reported missing after failing to show up for work on Monday. His apartment was found empty, with no signs of struggle. The only unusual detail, according to police, was a large quantity of cotton candy found in his freezer and 2 vintage amusement park tickets on his kitchen table. Security footage shows Morrison's door opening at 3:47 a.m. on Sunday, but no one is visible on camera. Morrison was known for his YouTube channel exploring abandoned places. Anyone with information is asked to contact local authorities. In other news, multiple residents of Millbrook, Iowa, reported seeing strange lights near the site of the old Wonderland Park last night. The property, abandoned since 1987, has been the subject of numerous urban legends. Local police investigated but found nothing unusual, though one officer noted the distinct smell of popcorn in the air. If you have any information about Jake Morrison's whereabouts, please contact... Static. Wait, can you hear that? That music? It sounds like a carousel. Why do I have a ticket in my hand? Where did this come from? Admit one, valid forever. Additional recording found, Jake's phone, recovered from Wonderland Park. Site. Recording begins. Timestamp 3:52 a.m., October 28th. If someone finds this, I don't know how much time I have to explain. The door opened and I walked through, and now I'm back at Wonderland, but it's different this time. Different from my first visit. The park isn't showing me memories anymore. It's showing me the truth. I'm in Harold Winthrop's office. It's above the funhouse, overlooking the entire park. There are documents everywhere, photos, maps, things that were never found after the park closed. And they tell a different story, a worse story. Arthur lied to me, or maybe he didn't know. Maybe none of them knew. Harold Winthrop didn't close the park because his daughter died. Sarah is here. I can see her through the window right now, riding the carousel. She's been riding it for 37 years. Around and around and around. She can't stop. None of them can stop. The documents. God, the documents. Harold wasn't trying to cure her cancer. There was no cancer. He was trying to preserve her, to keep her 17 forever. He found something. Or something found him. There are letters here from someone called the Carnival Master. They're dated from 1886, 1773, 1654, all signed by the same hand, all offering the same bargain. Your park for her life, your visitors for her joy, your eternity for her eternity. Harold took the deal. October 15th, 1987, he signed the contract. Not in ink, in something else. Something that still glows on the paper when I hold it to the candlelight. The last families to leave that night. The Morrison family from Des Moines, the Hendersons from Omaha, the Clearys from Chicago. They never made it home. Their cars were found abandoned on different highways, all the occupants missing. 17 families total, one for each year of Sarah's life. They're all here. I can see them from the window, still riding the rides, still playing the games, still eating cotton candy and laughing and having the best day of their lives. Over and over and over. They don't know they're trapped. They think they just arrived. Every loop, they think they just arrived. Arthur and the other employees, they weren't heroes who stayed with Harold. They were the first ones caught. The first ones who couldn't leave after closing time. They know they're trapped. That's the difference. They know and they've accepted it. And now they help trap others. Every person who finds a ticket, every person who comes here for closure, some of them don't leave. The park chooses, takes what it needs. One soul for every year the park has been closed. We're at 37 now, after tonight. 38. I can feel it happening to me. My feet are getting heavier. My memories of the outside world are fading like old photographs left in the sun. In a few minutes, I won't remember why I'm recording this. Won't remember I ever had a life outside Wonderland. I'll just be another employee helping Arthur run the rides, giving tickets to sad people who need closure. But before I forget, before I become part of this place, I need you to know something. The tickets aren't invitations. They're lures. The park is hungry. It needs people to keep the rides running, to keep Sarah happy, to keep the illusion alive. And it's getting hungrier. The emails, Retro Roadside 73, that's the park itself. It learned how to use the internet, learned how to find people like me, urban explorers, lost souls, people who wouldn't be missed immediately, people who were already looking for something in abandoned places. There are more parks. The Carnival Master's letters mention them. 33 in total, scattered across America, all closed between 1955 and 99. All with similar stories. Sudden closures, missing owners, local legends about lights in the darkness, and all of them connected, part of something called the Eternal Midway. I found a map, God help me, I found a map. Joyland in Kansas, Neptune's Kingdom in Florida, Silver Beach in Michigan, Freedom Land in New York. They're all part of it, all feeding the same thing. The Carnival Master isn't a person. It's the collective consciousness of every abandoned amusement park in America, every place where joy turned to rust, every carousel that stopped turning, every roller coaster that made its last run, and it's growing stronger. Every year, more parks close, more join the network, more tickets appear under windshield wipers, more people disappear into the space between memory and reality. My sister, Emma, wasn't really there. The park can't bring back the dead. It can only show us what we want to see, make us feel what we need to feel to stay. It feeds on our grief, our nostalgia, our desperate need to believe that happy places never really die. But they do die. And when they die wrong, when they die with unfinished business, with broken hearts, with unfulfilled promises, they become something else, something hungry, something that needs us to remember them so badly that they'll take us prisoner just to have an audience. I can hear footsteps on the stairs. Arthur, probably, coming to collect me, to give me my uniform, to teach me my role in the eternal show. But I'm not going without a fight. I'm going to try something. The contract Harold signed, it's right here. If I can destroy it, maybe I can free everyone. Sarah, the families, the employees, maybe even myself. The footsteps are getting closer. I'm going to put the phone down and grab the contract. If the recording cuts off, you'll know I failed. But if it doesn't, if I manage to Wait, the contract. It's not Harold's signature at the bottom. It's mine. My name, my handwriting, dated 3 weeks from now. How is that possible? How can I have signed something that hasn't happened yet? Unless time really does move differently here. Unless I've been here before. Unless I've always been here, and everything else, my life, my channel, my sister's death, was just the dream the park let me have. The doors opening. It's not Arthur, it's me, an older me, wearing a carnival Barker's uniform, smiling that same sad smile Arthur had. "Hello, Jake," he says. I say. We say. "Ready for your first day of forever?" I'm screaming, but no sound comes out. The phone is getting heavy. So heavy. Everything is heavy. Even the air. Even time itself. The other me is reaching for the phone. "Can't have that getting out," he says. "Might discourage visitors, and we need visitors. The park needs visitors. Sarah needs visitors." "This isn't real," I manage to whisper. "Real is relative here," he replies. "What's real? The happiness families felt here? The memories they made? The joy that soaked into every board and bolt? Or the decay outside, the rust and ruin? Which is the dream, Jake? The park in its glory, eternal and bright? Or the world where everything dies?" He's taking the phone now. My fingers won't grip it, won't hold on. Everything is fading, but I can still speak, still warn you. Don't come looking for me. Don't come to Wonderland. Don't follow the coordinates, don't take the ticket. The parks are spreading, connecting, growing. Soon they won't need tickets, won't need invitations. They'll just appear. In your dreams first, then in the corner of your eye, then in your backyard, your street, your... Recording ends abruptly. Final note. Found in Jake Morrison's apartment. Written on a Wonderland Park napkin. To whoever finds this, the recording on my phone isn't real. I made it up, all of it, for the video, for the views. Had to make it seem authentic, you know? The whole thing is just an ARG, an elaborate hoax. The park is just an abandoned place. Nothing supernatural, nothing dangerous. Please don't come looking for me, I'm fine. I just needed to disappear for a while. Creative burnout, you understand? But if you absolutely must visit Wonderland Park, if you can't resist the pull, bring iron filings. Spread them at the entrance. The old stories say iron disrupts things like this. Breaks connections. Forces truth through illusion. And whatever you do, whatever you see, whatever the park offers you, don't ride the carousel. The carousel is the heart. The carousel is where it all started and where it all ends. Harold's daughter loved the carousel most of all. She's still on it. Still 17. Still dying. Still living. Forever and ever and ever. The ticket in your hand is getting warm, isn't it? You're thinking about using it, aren't you? Don't or do. The park doesn't care. The park is patient. The park has all the time in the world. After all, every abandoned place was once somewhere people went to be happy. And happiness that strong. Happiness that pure. It never really dies. It just waits. Waits for someone to remember. Waits for someone to return. Waits for someone to stay. Check your pocket. I bet you have a ticket now, too. See you soon. Jake Morrison, or what's left of him. P.S. If you see my sister, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to leave. Tell her the park wouldn't let me. Tell her I'll be running the tornado now, just like Arthur. Forever. If you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, check your pockets. Check your car. Check under your pillow. Because the park remembers everyone who listens to its story. And sometimes it sends invitations. Sometimes it sends more than invitations. Sometimes it sends itself. Sweet dreams. And remember, if you hear carousel music tonight, don't follow it, unless you're ready for forever. listen the whispers and make a decision whether we are going to cooperate with the whispers or we just want to skip them. But actually, no one can skip these whispers. If you walk away from them, they will run towards you until they reach you. They confront you, make you pay, make you suffer the same thing they suffer. There is no escape from them. If you want to escape, help them, so they can have peace, and you also can have it. Help, or you will ask for help soon. So, the end of today's video has arrived. Share your personal horror experiences in the comments. Also, comment the part of the story that you find the most horror and terrifying. If you like this video, leave a like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Also, ring the bell icon so you don't miss the upcoming videos. Remember, don't run from whispers, because they follow you. They know you. They want you to listen, just confront them. Now, sleep well, or should I say, have a haunted night.